There is a county in West Virginia where 39% of enrolled schoolchildren had lost a parent to overdose by 2014. The coal had left decades before. The jobs followed. In the late 1990s, something arrived to fill the space. Not investment, not a single infrastructure program that outlasted its press release. What arrived were sales representatives carrying data on which local doctors wrote the most prescriptions and instructions to avoid the cautious ones. The FDA approved OxyContin in 1996 based on a study that lasted under 6 weeks. The label claimed it was significantly less addictive than comparable opioids. The company knew that claim was false before it was filed. These are 10 towns where the paperwork landed. What happened next was not an accident. Williamson, West Virginia. Population 2,900. Between 2006 and 2016, 2 pharmacies in that single town received 20.8 million hydrocodone and oxycodone pills from McKesson Corporation. That works out to roughly 2,000 pills per resident per year. McKesson's own internal compliance system flagged the orders as suspicious. The software was called the Controlled Substance Monitoring Program. The flags were reviewed by compliance officers, whose job was to stop exactly this. Yet the shipments were shipped anyway. The county's only emergency room ran out of naloxone twice in a single month in 2015. Nobody at the distributor called to ask why. In 2017, McKesson agreed to pay $150 million to settle federal charges related to its failure to report suspicious orders, charges that had been building for nearly a decade. No executive faced criminal prosecution. The settlement amounted to roughly $7,200 per flagged suspicious order. The town still has one stoplight. The pharmacy that received the bulk of those shipments is still open. Williamson was not the worst case in Mingo County, not even close. 19 miles south sits Kermit, West Virginia. Its population was 392. Between 2008 and 2015, a single pharmacy there received 9 million opioid pills. That was 23,000 pills per resident. The shipments came primarily from Amerisource Bergen. Court documents filed in the federal multi-district opioid litigation in Ohio showed the company had a standing internal policy of approving orders from high-volume pharmacies without individual review. A former compliance officer later testified that employees who raised concerns were told the company was not in the business of telling pharmacies what to prescribe. The DEA sent Amerisource Bergen a warning letter in 2007, noting that its West Virginia distribution patterns warranted investigation. The company filed a response. The orders continued for 7 more years. Kermit had no functioning grocery store by 2012. What it had was a pharmacy. Kermit's police department ran on 3 officers. One of them responded to more overdose calls in 2012 than the entire city of Charleston recorded in 2009. The police chief wrote to the county commissioner asking for help. He received no reply. What was happening to these towns had a point of origin, and the next case shows where it was. McDowell County, West Virginia. Population 100,000 at its peak in the 1950s. By 2010, it was 22,000 and still falling. The coal industry had stripped the county of everything useful. Broken backs, blackened lungs, company towns that dissolved when the seams ran thin, and then departed without notice. Life expectancy for men in McDowell County today stands at 63.9 years. Lower than Bangladesh, lower than Bolivia, lower than the occupied West Bank. The opioid crisis did not create that number. It carved it deeper. Purdue Pharma's sales representatives began targeting McDowell County physicians in 1997, 1 year after OxyContin received FDA approval. Internal company data had identified the county as a high-opportunity zone, a concentration of patients with legitimate chronic pain from mining injuries, bodies worn out by an industry that no longer needed them. A Purdue training document from 2001, produced during discovery in West Virginia's Attorney General lawsuit, instructed representatives to emphasize OxyContin's 12-hour release formula as a competitive advantage over shorter-acting products. The document did not contain the word addiction. Not once. The first OxyContin prescription in McDowell County was filled in spring of 1997. The first recorded overdose death came in 1999. By 2003, McDowell had one of the highest overdose mortality rates in the developed world. Its Main Street storefronts still stood, but they had the look of something emptied from the inside, walls holding their shape, while everything living behind them had long since rotted away. And someone had seen exactly what was happening before almost anyone else had a name for it. Dr. Art Van Zee practiced family medicine in St. Charles, Lee County, Virginia, a coal town 12 miles from the Kentucky border. In 1999, the same patients kept returning with the same complaint. They had run out of their OxyContin before the month ended. He wrote to Purdue Pharma directly, requesting a formal study on dependency rates. He organized a community meeting. He gathered data from local pharmacists, emergency rooms, and funeral home records, and assembled it into a documented case. In 2001, he co-authored one of the first published papers identifying OxyContin as the primary driver of a new rural addiction crisis across Appalachia. Purdue Pharma's response was to increase its marketing allocation in the region. A company spokesperson described his findings as anecdotal and alarmist. The FDA revised OxyContin's label that year, but only to address intravenous misuse. The oral dependency Van Zee had documented was not mentioned. He published a follow-up paper in 2003 with 3 more years of deaths attached to the same conclusion. He kept practicing in St. Charles. He kept writing letters. The pills kept arriving. He would spend the following decade watching his patients hollow out like the storefronts on McDowell's Main Street. The structure was still standing, everything living already gone. All different towns, all the same sequence. A region stripped by one industry and handed directly to another. A product marketed into the wound the first industry left behind. A distribution chain that flagged the damage in its own compliance software and shipped the boxes regardless. And in every county, at least one person who assembled the evidence sent it somewhere official and received in return the particular silence of an institution that had already decided not to act. Richard Sackler sent an email on February 29, 2001. He was president of Purdue Pharma. The email was a response to early press coverage of OxyContin abuse emerging from rural communities, the first reports that had made it into newsprint rather than remaining inside county coroners' logbooks. It was produced during discovery in the Kentucky Attorney General's lawsuit and read into the public record in 2019. In it, Sackler wrote that the company's response to the abuse reports should be to attack the abusers. The exact words as entered into the court record were, "We have to hammer on the abusers in every way possible, not the prescribing patterns, not the marketing materials, not the clinical data the company had known was insufficient since 1994. The abusers. The distinction mattered to them. It appears in a document with a Purdue letterhead. In the counties where those abusers lived, The county coroner was averaging a call every 4 days. That same year, Purdue's sales force received a new internal document ranking physicians by total OxyContin volume. The highest volume prescribers were designated super prescribers. Representatives were instructed to prioritize them for in-person visits, paid speaking engagements, and what the company termed educational grants. One super prescriber in eastern Kentucky wrote over 7,000 OxyContin prescriptions in a single calendar year. His DEA license was not suspended until 2003. Purdue had been issuing him patient starter vouchers, coupons allowing a patient's first OxyContin prescription to be filled at no cost until months before the suspension. The voucher program ran from 1996 to 2001. Purdue issued approximately 34,000 of them nationwide. The towns where those vouchers were redeemed appear in every overdose dataset that followed. They are not hard to cross-reference. The company kept excellent internal records. The distributors were watching the same numbers. In 2006, a senior compliance manager at Cardinal Health sent an internal memo to the company's Regulatory Affairs Division, noting that order volumes from several West Virginia and Kentucky pharmacies exceeded DEA threshold limits by 3 to 5 times. The memo recommended enhanced monitoring. It was logged. The enhanced monitoring was not implemented. Cardinal Health continued shipping to those pharmacies for 4 more years. In those years, families in the affected counties were learning to recognize the particular look of a house hollowed from the inside, the structure still standing, the windows still lit, everything living behind the walls already gone. The companies processing those shipments had spreadsheets for it. In 2012, the DEA suspended Cardinal Health's license at its Lakeland, Florida facility over exactly this failure. Cardinal Health settled with the DOJ for $44 million. The same year, the company reported annual revenues of $108 billion. The settlement did not affect the stock price. That number never appeared in a statement to shareholders either. Set that number against Pike County, Kentucky. By 2011, the county had lost more residents to overdose than to any other cause of death since the coal industry's peak fatality years in the 1930s. The county spent $2.3 million that year on emergency overdose response, nearly 18% of its entire public safety budget. Pike County's total annual budget was $38 million. The companies whose products drove those calls reported their settlements and continued without interruption. On one side, $108 billion in annual revenue, a $44 million settlement, and no criminal charges. On the other side, a county health budget hemorrhaging into ambulance runs, while the storefronts on the main commercial strip stood empty as pulled teeth. The next case shows what moved into those buildings. Prestonsburg, Floyd County, Kentucky. By 2010, Floyd County had more pain clinics per capita than any other county in the state, and the state had more pain clinics per capita than any state in the country except Florida. Prestonsburg's commercial strip held 2 pharmacies, a pain clinic operating out of a converted bank building, and a second clinic that had opened 6 months earlier in a former insurance office. Neither clinic required prior medical records. Both accepted cash. A state investigator who visited in 2009 documented patients arriving from Virginia, West Virginia, and Ohio, some driving more than 4 hours, and waiting on the sidewalk before the clinic opened. The investigator filed a report recommending criminal referral for both clinics. The report sat in the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services for 11 months before any action was taken. By then, one clinic operator had relocated to Florida and opened a new practice there. The building on Prestonsburg's main strip still has the old bank vault in the back room. In 2010, the Kentucky legislature considered Senate Bill 192, which would have required pain clinics to register with the state, mandated minimum record-keeping standards, and established a threshold for reporting unusually high prescribing volumes to the state drug monitoring program. The pharmaceutical industry spent $747,000 lobbying against it that session. That figure is recorded in Kentucky Legislative Ethics Commission filings. The bill was tabled in committee. A weakened version passed 2 years later, with the reporting threshold set significantly higher than the original draft. Between 2010 and 2012, Floyd County recorded 214 overdose deaths. The lobbying firms that worked against the bill also represented McKesson, Cardinal Health, and the Kentucky Pharmacists Association. The names are in the public record. The $747,000 is in the public record. The 214 deaths are in the public record. These three facts have never appeared together in a single Kentucky legislative proceeding. It was not a policy failure. It was a system operating exactly as its architects required. Emphasis on lobbying and deaths. In 2015, Joseph Ranazisi was removed from his position as head of the DEA Office of Diversion Control. He had spent 12 years building the agency's enforcement capacity against pharmaceutical distributors. Under his oversight, the DEA had issued 65 immediate suspension orders between 2008 and 2012. In 2016, Congress passed legislation restricting the DEA's authority to issue those suspensions without clearing a significantly higher evidentiary threshold. The pharmaceutical industry had lobbied for the bill for 3 years. It passed without a single Senate dissent. A joint investigation by the Washington Post and 60 Minutes later documented that a key provision had been drafted with assistance from a former senior DEA attorney who had since moved to private practice representing the same distributors the provision constrained. The bill's sponsors said it protected patient access to medication. The DEA called the new standard more workable. The DEA's own shipping database showed opioid volumes into Mingo County had increased for 6 consecutive years by the time the bill was signed. In Mingo County that year, opioids contributed to more than 2/3 of all the deaths among residents aged 25 to 54. Mingo County was not mentioned in the congressional record. The next counties on this list never made it into the record either. In Logan County, West Virginia, the overdose rate peaked in 2010 at 40.6 deaths per 100,000 residents, more than 8 times the national average. In Boone County, directly adjacent, the county health department published a report in 2009 identifying prescription opioids as the single greatest driver of reduced life expectancy in the county's recorded history. The report recommended coordinated action between the Pharmacy Board, the Medical Licensing Authority, and law enforcement. It was presented to the county commission. It was accepted. Nothing coordinated followed. The report gathered dust the way bones gather silt, slowly, without resistance, until the weight of it becomes indistinguishable from the ground. In Roane County, a county coroner began documenting the prescription origins at every overdose scene on his own initiative, because he wanted a record that could not be dismissed as anecdotal. By 2013, he had compiled detailed documentation on over 400 separate overdose incidents, distributor names, pharmacy names, prescribing physicians, and pill varieties. He submitted copies to the county sheriff. The sheriff forwarded them to the state police. The state police opened a preliminary inquiry. When the coroner retired in 2017, the inquiry was still listed as preliminary. In McDowell County that same year, the school district reported that 39% of enrolled students had lost a parent to overdose. The principal of the county's largest elementary school told a reporter she had stopped using the word orphan because too many of her students already knew what it meant. All different offices, the same gap, the same preliminary inquiry, opened and left to calcify. Huntington, Cabell County, West Virginia. Population 46,000. On August 15, 2016, the city recorded 26 overdoses in 4 hours. National news coverage lasted approximately 48 hours. Then the cameras moved on. The city did not. A quick response team was assembled within weeks. It included paramedics, social workers, and recovery coaches who visited every overdose survivor within 72 hours of an emergency call. Not to prosecute, to knock on a door. The model was built in a church basement by people who had already buried neighbors and who had stopped waiting for someone from outside to tell them how. It was funded by a single private grant of $400,000 from a regional foundation. The state contributed nothing in the first year. By 2019, the team had reached over 1,200 overdose survivors. 411 entered treatment within 30 days. That number moves in a different direction than every other number in this account. The federal government did not fund the model until 3 years after Huntington had built and proved it worked. Other counties were told to wait for federal guidance in the meantime. The waiting is ongoing in several of them. Was it planned? Nobody drafted a document that said Mingo County was expendable. Nobody circled Logan on a map and wrote sacrifice in the margin. What happened was more methodical than planning, and in some ways, harder to prosecute. A manufacturer built a sales infrastructure designed to identify the highest prescribing physicians and reward them for prescribing more. A distribution network engineered compliance systems that generated paper trails rather than stopped shipments. A lobbying operation spent years ensuring the federal agency responsible for enforcement lost the statutory authority to act quickly enough to matter. At each decision point, there was a name attached, a memo logged, a bonus paid. None of those actors used the word sacrifice. They did not need to. When a system is designed to extract profit at every node, and the population absorbing the cost has no political leverage and no line item in anyone's quarterly report, the outcome is not an accident. It is a transaction. The towns were not targeted by name. They were simply never protected. For the people who lived there, who buried their children, and then their neighbors, and then watched school enrollment fall by a third, the difference between targeted and unprotected is invisible. What McDowell County lost, a generation. What the Sackler family kept, more than $10 billion withdrawn from Purdue before its 2019 bankruptcy, while individual victim settlements averaged under $50,000 per claimant. What remains in Williamson, a recovery center, opened in a building on the main street that used to sell hardware, staffed entirely by people from the county. They kept the old sign bracket above the door. Nobody has decided yet what to hang from it.